Welcome back to After the Ashes, a beautiful Altadena podcast. I'm Steve Sachs, and I'm here with Shauna Dawson-Beer, and we're going to tackle another exciting policy issue today. Shauna, which one are we going to go after?
It's mortgage relief and property tax. I haven't given it a sexy title yet.
I don't think there is a sexy title
but
for either of these things.
We're going to talk about AB238, the mortgage relief bill, right, or the mortgage forbearance bill.
John's bill.
It is John Harabedian's bill.
Yep.
It was just signed in on September 22nd.
Yes.
So it's fresh, but it's real. It's happening. Do you want to give a background? Do you want me to run through a background?
You know, you've been dealing with this a lot more than I have.
Okay.
So.
I'll give a quick and dirty on it. AB238 is called the Mortgage Forbearance State of Emergency Wildfire Bill.
That's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful. It's an urgency statute, meaning it took effect immediately when it was chaptered. So it's a little bit different.
Most of the bills that have been passed related to the wildfire have
been those. As I said, this was signed in on September 22nd, and the bill is tied directly to the disaster as it was declared by Newsom on January 7th, and the federally declared FEMA disaster, that is the Eaton Fire, the Palisades Fire, and any associated events that we've probably all heard called the straight line winds, even though I think we would all call it the SCE fire, but my attorney would prefer that I not say that. So let's talk about the grin that I'm getting right now. It's as if Joe was sitting right next to me right now, except Joe would be wearing a cowboy hat.
I didn't become one for a reason.
Except Joe would be in a pair of great boots and a cowboy hat. The major components of AB 238. Who's eligible, which loans, right? So this is about mortgage forbearances. And actually, I'm going to back us up a little bit. So for those who are not familiar, those who are very familiar, again, if you're lucky enough to own your home, right? As we know, homeownership is absolutely a privilege that not everyone is afforded. But if you were able to own your home through generational wealth, generational families, or if you were able to buy in, or you bought in early, like many of us, again, I consider myself a newcomer in Altadena, having been there 15 years, but 15 years ago, you could still buy homes for considerably under $1 million, which is clearly has not been a thing for a very long time. So if you were lucky enough to be in that scenario and you owned your home, what happened after the fire is, thanks to another executive order that had been signed, everything went into an automatic forbearance. Your mortgages went into an automatic. Was it 3 or 4 months? 4 months.
4. You get
January through April.
You can elect for 4 months.
Correct. Well,
you didn't have to take each or the 4 months.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Steve, because therein lies some of the issues, right?
Yes.
And I know I've seen this and fielded a lot of it in our groups, but also I've had my own personal experience, which is a real fucking thrill.
This is why I wanted you to talk about it.
Oh my gosh. And I took some shots at Harabedian because Harabedian pushed that initial 4-month forbearance, and that I'm going to explain why. So that 4-month forbearance, in theory, you should have been able to elect in or elect out, but it didn't really work that way. This all happened so rapidly, and there was no way to really force compliance with different lenders. So, lenders handled this the way and interpreted it the way that they believed they should interpret and handle. So in the case of my lender, I knew that this was going to be a setup for foreclosure because there was no language that required the lender to consolidate or to refinance or to, there's another mortgage term that I'm missing right now, perimenopause, that pertains to restructuring that loan so that the 4 months of payment that you would miss would be tacked onto the back end or added to your principal or anything else, right? So in other words, you would be stuck with a balloon payment. And there's no benefit to having 4 months of no payment
to then get stuck with
4 months of payment at once.
Plus the month.
Exactly. Plus everything else. On top of the fact, we didn't have the money in January. We weren't going to have the money in April. And I was like, this is a setup for foreclosure. People are going to get screwed. And it did. That's exactly what happened. There are so many people in our community who did this thinking that it was going to help them. And it has now set them up for foreclosure, and they are battling foreclosure.
Well, I think this is similar to what happened with the prohibition of buying undervalued lots, where the predatory buyers, like the governor did an exemption within 7 days of the fire hitting, and the hope was that a bill like 797 would come into play before the expiration of the executive order. I think he extended it once, but the idea is today there is no real prohibition against that, I don't think. Maybe there is. I kind of lost track of it because executive orders to bills and the whole process. But back to your point, that 4-month forbearance, so to speak, the hope, I'm sure, was that there was going to be some form of structural fix in place. At least that's what I would hope.
That's what one would hope, right? But it didn't. Unfortunately, it didn't get implemented that way. So, I know that this mortgage.
There's a lot of issues with the implementation.
There were so many issues. So I know that the intentions were good. John's intentions were very good in doing this and pushing it through because it should have been a help for people. But unfortunately, again, with unscrupulous lenders, and I believe they are all unscrupulous, ultimately, it put a lot of people in a bad spot. Now, I knew it. I knew it was going to happen.
Did you have to do the forbearance?
So this is what I'm talking about. You didn't have to do it, but it was automatically applied. So in my case, I knew this was going to be a bad deal. And I had actually already, my loan had just been sold, and I was in the middle of another nightmare between the previous lender and the lender that my loan was sold to. So in my case, I was like, oh, this is just a recipe for disaster. So I continued to make my payments. January, February, March, I made my mortgage payments. In April, I made my payment plus, per their instructions and directions and their payoff quote that they had generated, I sent in and signed over all of my insurance checks, your coverage A dollars, because they sit on them. They got to co-sign them. And they sit on them and they make interest while you continue to pay your mortgage and pay interest. And that's a whole other conversation and thrill that you never think about, no one talks about, and you wouldn't imagine until you're in this boat with this kind of total loss disaster.
Turns out insurance
is a racket.
It's not, it gives you peace of mind, but in actuality, when you need it,
Yeah. We won't even get into that one because it would be too much of a sidebar. But
there's people who this is all they do for a living these days.
Well, yeah, me. I'm on adjuster number 10.
Yeah.
Me, I'm that person. 10 months, 10 adjusters. I cannot. So, Steve, let's keep on track.
I think a lot of people are sympathizing with this. I think these are the things.
It's bad.
These are the daily frustrations they feel.
Well, wait till you hear where I'm going with this mortgage story.
Oh, I know where you're going.
You know where I'm going. Yeah. But for our listeners, oh my gosh. So I specifically, deliberately did not take the forbearance. I kept paying. Fast forward to April, submit my monthly payment along with all my insurance dollars, my payoff request, my payoff note, send it certified mail to the address I was told to. And this was a whole nebulous thing because of the insurance component. It had to go to a special department that's in another state. It's a whole thing. Had receipt that they had cashed all the checks and so they had my money, they had the letter in April. Come May 1st, I get put into foreclosure. And they report to the credit bureaus that my home is in foreclosure. Plus 4 months of non-payment because even though they took my money with the forbearance, they didn't apply it. So at this point, I am in this deep thrill of battling on all fronts, right? It took me until the end of July to get that resolved to where my home was finally, in fact, paid off, and they sent me the dividend because not only did they have all the payoff money, they were sitting on more money because it was more than they were owed. Don't even get me started on the fact that my dirt alone was worth more than I owed, is worth more than I owed. And that is part of this racket. It is a legalized racket. It's like a legalized mafia. So yeah, nightmare. And I'm not the only one. So many people in the same situation, either with this, and I'm hearing about, and it wrecked my credit. They still haven't fixed that, and they won't.
No, and
so it wrecked my credit.
Yeah, and you
so
are
angry.
You are the personification of what so many in Altadena are feeling and are frustrated with. So the misapplication of a bill, because our government never misapplies things or never creates policy that gets us into trouble. 782. As a result, all this, your drama, your situation is something that everybody is near and dear. So we create a new bill. This new bill is supposed to be, what does it do? Explain to us.
So who's eligible, which loans? Okay, let's talk about it. So the law applies to, and I'm reading a breakdown, guys, so we're going to nail this, to residential mortgage loans, and that's an important distinction.
Remember ChatGPT at the bottom has a disclaimer.
Residential.
I'll be your attorney now.
I'm looking at Legiscan. This is the law applies to mortgage loans secured by real property improved with 4 or fewer residential units. That's an important caveat. It also allows borrowers with up to 10 investment properties to be eligible in earlier versions. That's interesting. So they tried to get that through, but it didn't happen. And it narrowed it down to just the small residential settings of 4 or fewer units. So if you're an investment property owner, you're SOL. And then your hardship must be very clearly tied to the declared disaster, in our case, the Eaton Fire, to attest the financial hardship. The forbearance, the bill requires that mortgages servicers offer an initial forbearance of up to 90 days, and then you can request extensions in 90-day increments up to a maximum of 12 months. And then any earlier forbearance that was already offered will count towards that 12-month total. So, for example, if you took the 4 months, you only get 8 months, right? Now,
read the fine print,
I know. So here we go. This is the interesting thing, because
but there's
that's
no
helpful.
balloon on this.
Correct. So there's a couple of interesting things that are different here. There's no balloon payment on this. This prohibits balloons. So thank you, John, for getting that, and that was a nightmare, again, set up for foreclosure for too many, and people are now losing their homes over the last forbearance. So this does prevent that. No more balloon payments. So you're not looking at a 12 or an 8-month payment due at the end. They will have to somehow reconfigure your loan to accommodate those missed payments. This also, during the forbearance period, prohibits your lender from charging any late fees or default interest rates, and from initiating foreclosure processes or seeking judgments, and most importantly for folks like me, for accounts that were current when you went into the forbearance and are performing as agreed. This bill also prohibits them from reporting delinquencies to any consumer credit agency. That's huge, because this is where people really got screwed, because if you weren't, that's what's come up in our group just in the last week. A few folks said, oh my gosh, I can't believe this, took the forbearance, everything was fine with that, did not deal with the foreclosure nightmare, did not deal with the balloon payment, but P.S., they reported me as in forbearance with 4 missed payments, and it completely screwed my credit. So, this is another huge piece.
So this would be what we call a cleanup bill. This is what it should look like.
Yeah, exactly. It is a bit of a cleanup bill.
So bravo.
And this may need a little more cleanup. Sorry, John.
Well, I mean, look, it's a hell of a lot better than what it was.
It's a hell of a lot better than what it was. So let's hope it helped folks. I really hope so. I have so many friends, especially with standing homes, who are in such a nightmare scenario with insufficient coverage, insufficient ALE meaning additional living expenses, or the money that you use to pay rent somewhere else when you can't live at home for literally years. But you still have to pay for that other property, including you got to pay your mortgage and your taxes. I was just getting my updated tax bill, which, spoiler alert, it's not that much lower. It's still big. I was like, I owe how much in April? A lot.
County's bankrupt.
Yeah. Who else is going to pay the $4 billion for the sexual assault settlements?
They got $700 million they got to come up with for the health.
Unbelievable.
Department. They got
absolutely unbelievable. Yeah. So that's where we're at. That is what AB238 is. So if you have not, here's the takeaway on this one. If you have not already, now you're a little more educated and informed about this. You know how it's supposed to work. You know how it could work to benefit you. Go take advantage of it. Call your mortgage lender. Ask them, what you're at. Can you get 12 months? Can you get 8 months? At least, again, it starts in if you need it. It starts in those. If you don't need it, don't get into this game, because it's going to be a mess.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm going to pay this, and I'm struggling, and I don't want to end up foreclosed on, this will at least buy you some time, and with any luck, we'll have another fix-it bill at the end of the year period to give you some additional extensions, because I've said it 1,000 times. I'm going to say it here on this podcast again. What people need is time and money buys time. And when I say time in this case, years. We are not going to be able to rebuild our homes for years. People are going to need some form of mortgage support for years if they're not in a position or it doesn't make financial sense for them to pay it off. Because how the heck else are they going to, even if they had ALE, they're going to run out. People are running out right now. Another batch of people will run out in the new year. The longest it could be extended would be January of 2028, if you had enough money. That's the 3-year mark. Insurance claims like this are 2 years, and then you get the federal disaster layer, and that gives you an extra year. It's how we get from January 2027 to January 2028. But the majority don't have enough money to stretch to that point. So at some point, sooner than later, they're out of money, but their house isn't rebuilt. Then what?
Well,
exactly, Steve.
I look, nobody ever said it was easy to be in government. I mean,
Apparently, it's not easy to have your whole fucking town burned down either.
Well, I didn't say it was. That's why some of us stood up when this happened, because we knew that things had to be done.
Yep.
And, it was
So-
this was going to require different thinking and different ways of seeing the world.
So with this, while we're on this topic, do we want to talk about property tax?
Well, I think it ties in.
I think so too. You want to walk us through it?
Well, I mean, you and I both been talking about this, and there are others out there. You know who you are. You're hopefully listening, who have brought up the property tax question to us and brought it up to me. And the issue really comes down to, we've all been told something, but I'm thinking a lot of people are learning that words are cheap. You got to put things down on paper and you got to show it. Now, Shauna, stop me if I'm wrong, or stop me when I'm incorrect in understanding this. But as I see it, or as I've read and tried to educate myself and speaking with the assessor's office, there's this conception that we are going to. The LA Times put it out right afterward. If you have a 1,200 square foot house, you build back 1,200 square feet, your property tax stays the same. And this is really for those that are multi-generational Prop 13, which means people who have been grandfathered into low property taxes for their home, like maybe $1,000 a year on $1 million home, which is now worth $1 million. So again, I go back to, the Constitution as it relates to Prop 13, as it relates to this property tax, is the cash value. Cash value of the home has nothing to do with square footage. And so there's a lot of misunderstanding about what this means. Now, over the summer, I got pinged with people telling me, no, Steve, you don't understand. Everything's going to be fine. People are being assured everything's going to be fine. I've stood in front of the assessor, has stood there and told me this. People associated with the assessor, they've told me it's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. And I go, give me something in paper, in writing. Give me something with the assessor's name and the seal on there that tells me that this is going to be the case. Because I've been through this before. And I know what happens when somebody makes an assurance to me and then it doesn't work out that way. And I go sue, and the judge goes, sorry, that's what the law says. They make the determination. That's the end of it. And so if it's not written in paper and it doesn't have the assessor's name, his signature, and his, the transfixed, the seal from the assessor's office, it's not worth what you're being told. So here we are. Cash value is what the law says. It doesn't say anything about square footage. This was a confusion that came up in 2020 after the Woolsey fire, and Jackie Irwin, who is the assembly person out there, and actually is affected by this fire as well, sponsored legislation back in 2020. I think it was AB238 or something like that. It was vetoed by the governor. But on that bill, it was exactly how we understood it, which is the cash value or the square footage. Whichever one you built back to, plus 10%, you'd be fine. And the assessors across the state got on the governor, even though it passed the legislature, we can do the same thing with 782, and was able to get the governor to veto it because this would change the entire case of how the assessments would work. So let's fast forward to today. All right, here we stand. We've been told all these things. The assessor was trying to push a bill through Assemblymember Schultz from Burbank, and it got shelved. Same type of thing. It was about giving more discretion to the assessor. Why? Because the assessor is going to be on the hook to have to decide whether or not what the cash value is. And as it's been explained to me, if he lowers the cash value for the homes here, because he has it in his discretion to bring it down to, like if you rebuild and it was, based on the 1973 or 1978 property tax value, he can do that. But then is that a violation of every other property tax assessment across the county? And so add to that the idea that AB7 or SB 782 is all about property tax increment financing, folks. So you have these competing interests. And why we not get out a straight answer, I got an email the other day from the assessor's office. He's running for re-election in 2026. So I'll let you do the math here. But this is a major issue that I think we as a community also have to stand up for, because the incentives are aligned to go to assess as high as possible. You're going to go build. Edison has now given us a floor of $600 a square foot or so. So now your home that was probably bought for $100,000 can now be worth $800,000. Is that difference going to be taxable? That's the question.
That is a big question.
And there is no clear answer on this. And it's mind-boggling, because here we are, people are rebuilding now. People are having to make these decisions. And did Edison, by giving that number, now allow a base for the property tax increment financing to be based upon, so investors know what the new taxable rate's going to be for all those homes? Now, those are my questions. I'll let Shauna talk now.
Well, they're all good questions, and I have the same questions. I keep hearing from various circles not to worry about this. It's exactly as we just discussed. It's going to be, if you're like for like, you're not going to have any problem. Even if you're doing a small addition or even a significant addition, you're only going to be taxed on the addition, that additional square footage, the original square footage. All of that will remain at the same property tax value. This is the party line. But to your point, Steve,
community groups were promised that everything was going to be fine on 782 too.
Exactly. To
And
your
now
point,
what?
none of it is in writing. None of it. And
So-
every time we have pressed and asked that question, it gets danced around, and I'm told not to worry about it.
Well,
And
what happens when county council comes back and says to the assessor, and it's not the assessor who says this, county council says it, and I know how government works. Nobody argues with the lawyers. If the lawyer comes in and says this is the way it's going to go,
Yep,
then what?
here we are. I had really hoped that we would have Jeff Prang on this episode to discuss this with us, because I know he's open to having the conversation about this, and has been very open. And we have some mutual friends, and I appreciate his candidness. And I'm sorry that because we had some travel schedule issues and took the last couple of weeks off and then jumped into this pretty quickly, right back into it. This is not the case today, but if you're listening, Jeff, we would love to have you on an episode to walk through this with everyone, because it's a major concern. Some of us, like myself, this is one of the topics on the short list of reasons that I'm not jumping into a rebuild. There are too many questions that remain unanswered, too many things that could make it, make this not make sense. And the numbers for all of us trying to rebuild have to make sense. So again, more questions than answers.
Well, and this was sort of back to my whole point about back to 782 and just the it's not any one thing, but you take all these things into totality, right? You take the property tax, you take Edison making a settlement that I know a lot of people are upset with, but it's not wholly unreasonable.
No, it'll make sense for some people.
And you have, the insurance situation, you have, the densification, and, it comes together and you start saying, like, what is the goal here? And that is really why it all fills around 782. And, again, it's not about gentrification. It's about the right gentrification. It's about having input. And by having 782 in place, we have a lot of arbitrary decisions being made, whether it's the assessor's office, whether it's
The
782, and it all goes back to who's making these decisions.
Not us.
And,
we don't even get consulted.
And so that's really where we are, and we need to be able to push back and say, wait a second, let's stop this top-down and start to build in, because look, if 782 goes away and we don't need to have the property tax increase to try to pay for everything, we have to come up with a new way to do it, which there are ways to do it. Does that then change the conversation to what's the inducement for the assessor? What is, where are the priorities and how does this work? But if we go down this road, are we leaving ourselves exposed? And I guess that's why, all these things are happening, and it's really, it gives one pause.
We're exposed on every front. I mean, what was it, like episode 2 or 3? I said, let's count yet another way for us to get bent over and,
Well, there are,
effed, because
but there are,
it's what continues to happen. I don't want to sound like I'm forever negative or cynical, but I am a realist. I'm absolutely a realist, and this stuff is happening. It's happening. It's not like we're just running around. I said some days I feel like Chicken Little running around like the sky is falling. The sky is falling. It is in fact falling.
There are billions of dollars.
Yeah, I think that's the big takeaway of this episode and the last episode on 782 SB9. And I didn't say this in the last episode, and I should have, and I should be repeating it every episode because it is a perfect framework to understand what we are looking at. Do not underestimate the reality that we, Altadena, are one of, if not the biggest real estate deal Southern California has ever seen. We are a multi-billion-dollar real estate deal.
Haven't I been saying this from the
You
start?
have been saying this from the start. And, and I've been screaming this with you from the rooftops, and people are not, I think people are actually now starting to come around and get this.
Yeah, but it's going to be too late.
But at which point it's too late. There's too much money at stake. We are too valuable. This is what I keep saying, that like everyone but the fire victims are getting rich. Everyone but the fire victims are making money here.
Yeah.
It is a our disaster economy is a cash cow. We are a cash cow.
Yes.
For everybody but us. And make
Yes.
no mistake, that is also going to come from your property values and your property taxes and your assessments, because there's no way for it not to, because this is how 782 works.
So,
There we are.
call to action, folks.
Yep. Call to action. More letters and calls. More letters and calls.
Well, or don't complain when it happens, because there will be nothing we can do.
Yep. And I don't want to say I told you so. It gets really tiresome being right.
Well,
I'm serious. I would love to be wrong. I would love to be wrong on this
there's
topic
a lot
in
of people
particular.
that want to prove us wrong.
Great. Please do, by the way. Please. Open challenge. Please do prove me wrong, because I would love to be wrong, because then that's one area where we're all a little less screwed, and I'll take that right now.
Yeah, that's a heads I win, tails you lose.
All right. On that cheery note, it's time for a little small business shout out.
All right.
Okay. I want to talk about Rhythms of the Village.
All right.
Do you know Rhythms of the Village?
I do.
Okay, cool. So Rhythms of the Village was located, sadly, their building is gone, on North Lake.
They're right by the post office.
Yep,
Right?
they were by our post office for a very long time. Just a fantastic shop, but also a fantastic band, hosting drum circles, hosting community events, all manner of things separate of their shop, where they sold a lot of great stuff that you can find online. You can find Rhythms of the Village online through their social media. They have some really awesome merch. It's one of my favorite lines of Altadena hoodies, hats, tote bags. The hoodies in particular were always my favorite. It's one of the first things I replaced after the fire. And they also just welcomed a new baby, a little boy.
Oh,
I think like a
Mazel
week
tov.
ago. Yeah, Mazel tov for the
Awesome.
family. They have a new baby boy. So they are bringing back their Rhythms of the Village Fall Fest. It is on November 22nd from 1 to 7 p.m. And this year it'll be at John Muir High School,
Okay.
because obviously it cannot be hosted by them. So I will read from their own event post where they said live music, good food, local vendors, community love, all are welcome to this vibrant celebration of culture and unity. More than 1,500 people came to the Spring Fest, and this time they are going even bigger. So bring your friends, your family, bring your whole tribe, and let's celebrate the spirit of Altadena together.
Awesome.
All right, on that note, we're going to wrap up this episode. As always, I am Shauna Dawson-Beer. I am also at Beautiful Altadena on Instagram, on socials, on Substack, on Facebook. You can find our Facebook groups for locals only on Facebook under Beautiful Altadena.
Well, yeah, I'm nowhere near as out there. I'm Steve Sachs. I'm on the Substack, and that's about it. So,
And where's your Substack, Steve?
Alta Policy Wonk. And yeah, come on, take a look. Bore yourself to death.
It's good stuff. It's a deep dive. It's
pulling back though. We've gotten to the point where there's not much more we can do. So
yeah, that's a depressing statement where Steve is
Well-
like, well, the ship has sailed, so
well,
we don't have to keep talking
I mean,
about
like
it.
it's going to a new stage, and we'll see. But
It
I
is.
know it was a lot at the time, and for those that have stuck it out, thank you.
Yeah, and likewise, thank you to everyone who's listening. And on that note, if there's anything you would like us to talk about or cover that we haven't or aren't, shoot us an email. Shoot me an email, beautifulaltadenaog@gmail.com.
Or just
We'd love to hear
send
from
me
you.
nastygrams on the Substack.
That works too. He especially loves nasty public comments. I enjoy reading them too. All right, on that note, until next time.
It's Steve here and Shauna,
Shauna.
and we'll talk to you soon. Bye now.